we uncover the hidden truths behind the masks people wear. Today's story takes us inside the iron gates of Northwood Academy, a place where the tuition costs more than most people earn in a year, and social standing is determined before the first bell rings. The morning sun didn't just shine on Northwood, it glinted off a parade of polished chrome and German engineering. The student parking lot looked less like a school grounds and more like a high-end dealership. Here, teenagers didn't just arrive, they made entrances. Engines roared, doors slammed, and the air was filled with the confident chatter of those who had never known a day of want. In the center of this golden circle was Ethan. Stepping out of a convertible that cost a small fortune, he adjusted his designer jacket, surveying his kingdom with a look of bored entitlement. He was the sun around which the school's social planets orbited, loud, wealthy, and seemingly untouchable. But just beyond the gates, the public bus hissed to a halt. From it stepped Leo. There were no fanfare and no entourage for him. He pulled his hood up against the morning chill, gripping the straps of a backpack that had been stitched and restitched. He walked past the luxury cars, eyes forward, trying to remain invisible in a world designed to highlight his differences. He didn't know it yet, but this morning his invisibility was about to be shattered, and the silence he kept to survive was about to be broken by a voice that would echo much further than the school hallways. This is the story of rich kid mocks poor student's shoes, didn't know his dad was watching. The gleaming hallways of Northwood Academy always seemed to amplify the difference between the haves and the have-nots. Among the former was Ethan, whose daily accessories included designer sneakers and a dismissive smirk. His target today, as it often was Leo. Leo was bright, quiet, and carried the weight of responsibility that only a student working 2 part-time jobs while maintaining high grades could understand. His shoes, while clean, were visibly worn, the soles smoothed by countless miles of walking, the fabric faded from too many washes. They were a necessary, functional item, not a fashion statement, and certainly not a point of pride. Ethan spotted Leo by the lockers, carefully packing his books into a backpack that had seen better decades. He swaggered over, flanked by his usual sycophantic entourage, who immediately adopted Ethan's condescending posture. The moment was ripe for Ethan to perform his daily ritual of social dominance. He leaned in, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of nearby students, but cloaked in a faux-friendly tone that made him seem more playful than malicious to a casual observer. "Hey, Leo," Ethan began, the word dripping with false sincerity. "Tell me, man, are those vintage?" He deliberately gestured towards Leo's feet, his face contorted in an exaggerated expression of confusion, as if trying to decipher some ancient artifact. Leo's face flushed hot, but he kept his eyes fixed on his locker, trying to will the moment away. He knew that any reaction would only fuel Ethan's amusement. "They're just shoes, Ethan," he mumbled, trying to close his locker door. But Ethan wasn't done. He used the toe of his pristine, blindingly white sneaker, the latest release from a brand that costs more than Leo's family's weekly grocery bill, to gently nudge Leo's scuffed, graying pair. "Oh, no, just shoes is what people call my dad's old golf cleats. These are a statement. They scream, I haven't discovered the magical world of shoe polish, or perhaps the magical world of a job." The entourage snickered on cue. The sting wasn't just in the words, it was in the public humiliation. Leo wasn't ashamed of his family's financial situation, but he hated the spotlight it constantly put him under. His parents were hard-working, honest people, and he was doing his best to alleviate their burden. Yet, in Ethan's eyes, he was just a prop, a foil to highlight Ethan's own enviable status. Leo finally managed to snap his locker shut and turn away, clutching his backpack straps so tightly his knuckles were white. He heard Ethan call after him, "Seriously, dude, charity auction them. I'll bid 10 cents just for the novelty." The laughter that followed echoed down the hallway, an auditory confirmation of Leo's invisibility in the school's social hierarchy. Emotional school story. The school environment, which is supposed to be a place of learning and growth, had become a daily emotional battlefield for Leo. The constant, subtle, and sometimes overt bullying wasn't physical, but its psychological toll was far heavier. It eroded his confidence, making the simple act of walking to class or sitting down in the cafeteria an exercise in anxiety management. Every day he put on a brave face, a facade of indifference, but inside, the words and the looks, chipped away at his resilience. That morning, as Ethan mocked his shoes, the emotional weight of his entire situation threatened to crush him. He wasn't just being ridiculed for his footwear. He was being judged and diminished for his poverty, for his parents' struggle, and for his own desperate efforts to rise above their circumstances. The shame he felt wasn't his own. It was the shame Ethan tried to impose on him. As he walked away, his eyes stung, but he refused to let the tears fall. Crying in the hallway would only give Ethan another victory, another tale to recount for laughs. The true emotional depth of the story, however, lay not just in Leo's suffering, but in the contrast of the two worlds colliding within the school walls. For Ethan, life was a game played on the easiest setting. His biggest worry was which sports car his father would buy next, or whether his private tutoring session conflicted with a party. For Leo, every day was a strategic victory, making it to class on time after a shift, budgeting his lunch money to save for college applications, and simply enduring the environment designed to make him feel less than. The emotional resonance of the entire scenario was amplified by the silent witnesses. Other students saw what happened. Some felt pity, others felt relief that they weren't the target, and a few, the ones in Ethan's orbit, felt a perverse sense of belonging by aligning with the power. Yet no one intervened. That lack of intervention was a powerful, sad current in the school's emotional landscape. It confirmed to Leo that he was truly alone in his struggle. The silence of the majority was as heavy and hurtful as the taunts of the few. This school story wasn't just about a pair of shoes. It was about the crushing loneliness of class differences and the human cost of unearned arrogance. It built a palpable tension, a longing for justice, a desperate hope that someone, anyone, would see Leo's quiet struggle and finally stand up for him. The emotional narrative was a ticking clock, waiting for the inevitable moment of reckoning where the internal injustice would be made visible and addressed, hopefully by a force greater than a struggling, silent student. This simmering resentment and unaddressed cruelty created a powerful emotional bond with any viewer who had ever felt overlooked, judged, or marginalized in their own life, making Leo's quiet dignity in the face of mockery a testament to inner strength. The moment Ethan's perfectly manicured, expensive sneaker nudged Leo's worn footwear, a line was crossed. This wasn't just casual meanness. It was calculated cruelty, designed to maximize public degradation. Ethan viewed the school hallways as his personal stage, and Leo was simply the unfortunate prop he used to demonstrate his own superiority. But what Ethan, blinded by his own privilege and arrogance, failed to grasp was that every performance has an audience, and sometimes that audience holds unexpected power. The bullying had been escalating for weeks, moving from snide remarks about Leo's thrift store clothes to pointed jabs about his need for financial aid. The shoe incident, however, felt definitive, a crystallization of all the malice. As Ethan swaggered away, basking in the cheap validation of his cronies' forced laughter, he felt untouchable. He assumed the social hierarchy was immutable. He was the top predator, and Leo was merely prey. This certainty was the foundation of his downfall. He had learned lessons in advanced physics and AP calculus, but he had entirely failed to learn the simplest lesson of human interaction, that everyone, regardless of their visible circumstances, deserves respect, and that arrogance eventually invites comeuppance. What made this particular instance of bullying different was not Leo's reaction, which was, as always, quiet endurance, but the silent presence of a man standing near the stairwell. This man, impeccably dressed in a bespoke suit that spoke not of flashiness but of quiet, established wealth, had witnessed the entire ugly spectacle. He was not just a witness, he was an intentional observer, having arrived early for a meeting with the principal. As Ethan performed his mockery, the man's face remained impassive, his posture rigid. He absorbed the callousness of the rich kid's actions, from the condescending tone to the deliberate, cruel gesture of the foot. The bully's lesson was being set in motion, not by an immediate confrontation, but by a precise, calculating observation. Ethan continued his day, entirely oblivious. He aced a pop quiz in economics, casually dismissed his friends for daring to suggest his favorite brand of headphones was getting old, and generally acted like the world revolved on his axis. He had already forgotten about Leo and the scuffed shoes. For Ethan, the incident was nothing more than an insignificant footnote in his flawless day. However, the man by the stairwell hadn't forgotten. He followed the principal into the meeting room. The image of Ethan's sneering face and Leo's painful humiliation burned into his memory. The meeting, ostensibly about Northwood Academy's new endowment campaign, quickly took a turn. The man, a prominent and highly influential alumnus and potential major donor, waited until the principal was detailing the school's commitment to fostering a respectful and inclusive environment before he spoke. His voice was calm, measured, and utterly devastating. He described in precise detail the interaction he had just observed, highlighting not the severity of the act, but the cold, casual arrogance that underpinned it. He concluded with a statement that hung heavy in the air, that a school that tolerates such open, class-based cruelty among its students has fundamentally failed its mission, regardless of the size of its endowment. The principal, who knew the critical importance of this donor, was mortified. The gears of institutional discipline, slow and often forgiving to wealthy students, were suddenly oiled with urgency and fear. Ethan's sense of untouchability was about to be profoundly shattered, not by the victim he mocked, but by the swift, unanticipated hand of power that despised his lack of character. The lesson, when it arrived, would be comprehensive and public, precisely because his crime had been public. Hidden identity story. The quiet, reserved student known as Leo carried a weight far heavier than his second-hand backpack. He carried a secret, or rather, his family did. To Northwood Academy, Leo was a scholarship student, a brilliant but financially struggling kid living in a modest apartment on the far side of town. That much was true. What no one, especially not Ethan, knew was the true extent of the man Leo knew simply as Dad's friend, or Uncle Mark, the man who had been the chief architect of his father's successful, albeit quiet, tech venture. Leo's father, Mr. Julian Chen, was a visionary engineer, a man who valued anonymity and ethical business practices over public acclaim and flashy displays of wealth. Years ago, he had made his fortune by selling a revolutionary software patent, securing financial independence for life. However, horrified by the materialistic upbringing he saw among his colleagues' children, he made a solemn vow. His son, Leo, would be raised with an appreciation for hard work, frugality, and character, not given a silver spoon and instant access to privilege. They lived comfortably, not lavishly. Mr. Chen drove a reliable older model car. Leo was given a controlled allowance that required him to earn extra money, and they lived in a neighborhood that wasn't defined by sprawling mansions. Leo's acceptance into Northwood was based purely on his academic merit and a need-based scholarship his father had insisted upon applying for, despite having the means to pay the full tuition 5 times over. Mr. Chen wanted his son to experience the world outside the bubble of extreme wealth, to understand the value of a dollar and the dignity of every job. He wanted his son to be measured by his character, not his credit limit. The worn shoes were not a sign of absolute poverty, but a deliberate choice. Leo had saved up for months to buy a newer pair, but ultimately spent the money to help pay for his younger sister's unexpected medical bill, a decision his father was immensely proud of. The family's hidden identity was their most crucial test, a sociological experiment in character building. Unbeknownst to Ethan, the man observing the stairwell incident, the influential alumnus and potential donor, was Mr. David Albright, one of Mr. Chen's oldest and most trusted business partners, the very Uncle Mark Leo referred to. Albright knew the full extent of the Chen family's wealth and their peculiar, deeply moral reasons for concealing it. He also knew that Mr. Chen, a man of quiet conviction, valued fairness and personal responsibility above all else. When Albright detailed the bullying incident to the principal, he did so with the full knowledge that he was not just defending a poor student, but the son of a man whose values he profoundly respected. The irony of the situation was immense. Ethan was mocking a student for his perceived lack of wealth, utterly unaware that the boy's family possessed a fortune that dwarfed his own father's more ostentatious, highly leveraged riches. The hidden identity wasn't just a plot twist. It was the ultimate, cosmic setup for justice. It meant that the power structure Ethan thought he understood, the one that allowed him to demean others with impunity, was fundamentally flawed. The boy he mocked wasn't a victim of circumstance, but a quiet master of a carefully curated circumstance, and the retribution, when it came, would be driven not by pity, but by the quiet, overwhelming authority of a father who was, at that very moment, seeing his social experiment tested by the very arrogance he had sought to shield his son from. The hidden identity of Leo's family transformed the story from a tale of victimhood into a potent narrative of moral judgment and poetic justice, ensuring that the bully's comeuppance would be far more meaningful than a simple detention. The phone call Ethan's father, Mr. Harrison, received from the Northwood Academy principal was unlike any he had ever taken. Usually, the school called to praise Ethan's academic performance or to discuss his potential for early admission to an Ivy League university. Today, the tone was strained, the words chosen with cautious gravity. The principal relayed the account from Mr. David Albright, the prominent alumnus, describing the incident in the hallway with chilling neutrality. Mr. Harrison listened, gripping the phone tighter as the details unfolded: the designer shoes, the mocking tone, the public nature of the humiliation, and the specific target: the student on financial aid. Mr. Harrison's immediate reaction was a searing blend of professional embarrassment and personal shame. Mr. Harrison was a self-made man. He had not inherited his wealth. He had earned it through relentless, often brutal, work in the highly competitive finance world. He understood what it meant to struggle, to wear cheap shoes, and to feel the sting of judgment. While he had indulged his son with the fruits of his success, he believed he had instilled fundamental values: integrity, hard work, and most importantly, respect for anyone who worked hard. Hearing the principal recount Ethan's actions described as classist and profoundly disrespectful, was a profound professional risk and a moral failure. His standing in the community, his business reputation, and, most crushingly, his personal sense of successful parenting were all suddenly under threat. When Ethan arrived home that evening, the atmosphere was thick with an unfamiliar silence. The usual cheerful chaos of their sprawling, meticulously designed house was absent. Mr. Harrison was waiting in his study, a room Ethan rarely entered, sitting behind a massive oak desk, the very picture of contained disappointment. He didn't shout. He didn't even raise his voice. He simply held up a printout of the email from the principal, its contents redacted, of the donor's name, but the description of the event stark and undeniable. "Tell me about this, Ethan," Mr. Harrison said, his voice flat and controlled, which was far more terrifying than any yell. Ethan, initially attempting to dismiss it as just a joke or schoolyard teasing, quickly realized the gravity of the situation. His father cut through his excuses like a laser. "A joke? A joke at the expense of someone who, by the school's own record, is working twice as hard as you just to be there? You didn't mock his shoes, Ethan. You mocked his life. You mocked his effort. You mocked the very idea of hard work and self-reliance, which is the only thing your mother and I have ever valued." The ensuing lesson was not about punishment, not yet. It was about perspective. Mr. Harrison did not ground him or take away his phone immediately. Instead, he forced Ethan to confront the reality of the underprivileged. He pulled up news articles and statistics about students working while studying, about the financial sacrifices families make. He recounted his own past, moments of hunger and humiliation he had long kept private, shattering the polished image of the always successful father. He told Ethan, "The greatest asset you have is your name and the respect that comes with it. You just traded that asset for the cheap laugh of 2 minutes in a hallway. And that disrespect, Ethan, is what costs fortunes, both moral and financial." The core of the lesson was a forced apprenticeship in humility. Mr. Harrison declared that Ethan's immediate life was changing. His credit cards were revoked, his car keys confiscated, his allowance would be drastically reduced. More significantly, he was told that he would be spending his entire Christmas break working at one of his father's charity foundations, specifically organizing donations of clothing and supplies, including shoes, for underprivileged youth. "You need to understand the true value of a pair of shoes, not just the brand name. You will spend every day dealing with people who are good, honest, and deserving, and you will learn to treat them with the courtesy and respect that you failed to show your classmate." It was a deliberate, targeted lesson, designed to strip away the veneer of privilege and expose him to the consequences of his callousness, proving that true wealth lies in character, not possessions. Unexpected twist ending. Ethan's carefully constructed world of entitlement was about to be obliterated by a twist of fate so sharp, so ironic, that it perfectly encapsulated the folly of judging others based on superficial appearances. The unexpected element wasn't just the fact that Leo's father, Mr. Chen, was wealthy. It was the deep, almost conspiratorial connection between the two families' financial spheres. A connection Ethan was about to become agonizingly aware of. After Mr. Harrison's severe lecture, the official school consequence was handed down: 2 weeks of in-school suspension and a mandatory public apology delivered to Leo in front of the principal and a guidance counselor. Mr. Harrison insisted on being present for the apology, ensuring its sincerity. The next day, as Ethan nervously waited in the principal's outer office, preparing his humiliating statement, a man entered, exuding a quiet confidence that filled the room. This man was Mr. Julian Chen, Leo's father. Ethan recognized him vaguely from a few school events, but he looked different today. Not the deferential parent Ethan had subconsciously expected. He was dressed impeccably, and his manner was reserved but powerful. Mr. Chen was accompanied by Mr. David Albright, the alumnus who had witnessed the bullying and catalyzed the entire disciplinary process. Mr. Harrison rose immediately, extending his hand. "Julian, David, thank you for coming," he said, his tone heavy with apology. Ethan watched the exchange, confused. Why were these two important men, one an influential alumnus, the other, presumably the parent of the poor kid, being treated with such deference by his father? The principal ushered them all into the meeting room. As they sat, Mr. Chen looked directly at Ethan, not with anger, but with a profound, almost surgical disappointment. "Ethan," he said, his voice soft but firm, "you were wrong to judge my son. He is at this school on his own merit. The reason his shoes are worn is a private family decision that speaks to his character, not his lack of means." Then came the twist that dismantled Ethan's entire worldview. Mr. Chen turned to Mr. Harrison. "Harrison," he said, using his first name, "we need to talk about the latest financing round for the Aura project." Ethan gasped, a small, involuntary sound that was drowned out by the gravity of the names just exchanged. Aura was the code name for his father's newest, highest-stakes venture, the one that determined their family's entire financial future. The lead investor, the man whose capital was essential to the deal, was notoriously secretive, and only known in whispers as the quiet strategist. Mr. Harrison nodded stiffly. "We can discuss the final terms later, Julian." Mr. Chen smiled faintly, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "No, Harrison, we'll discuss them now. Because I need to know that the man I'm investing nearly $1 billion with, the man who will determine the future of Aura, doesn't raise children who use their accidental privilege to crush the spirit of others." Ethan was utterly paralyzed. Leo's quiet, unassuming father wasn't just wealthy. He was the lead investor in his father's company, the financial puppet master who held the key to their entire family's continued wealth and status. The student whose worn shoes he had so cruelly mocked was the son of the man who now held his own father's professional reputation in the palm of his hand. His disrespect wasn't just a personal failing. It was a catastrophic financial miscalculation. The quiet student's family was the true, quiet titan of industry, while Ethan's father was the highly visible, publicly successful one who was actually dependent on the generosity and trust of the poor student's parent. This reversal of power and status was the ultimate, unexpected lesson, far surpassing any grounding or detention the school could have administered. The true cost of his arrogance was the threat of his entire privileged existence being pulled out from under him, all because of the casual, callous judgment he cast upon a humble pair of shoes. The core conflict of the narrative was the stark, tangible clash between two socio-economic realities: the wealthy world embodied by Ethan, and the underprivileged world, as perceived by Ethan, represented by Leo. Ethan lived a life where needs were instantaneously met and desires were quickly fulfilled. His understanding of reality was filtered through designer labels and high-end consumerism. For him, a worn pair of shoes wasn't a sign of sacrifice or character. It was merely a deficiency, a visible marker of failure that justified his contempt. This perspective was a product of his privileged bubble, where the primary struggle was maintaining appearances and chasing the next expensive trend. His mocking reflected not a lack of empathy, but a profound ignorance of life outside his gilded cage. Leo, conversely, existed in a world defined by strategic choices and necessity. His life was rich in effort and value, but poor in material excess. The worn shoes were a symbol of his family's commitment to prioritizing necessities over vanity, and his own personal choice to contribute to his family's well-being. This contrast between the materially wealthy, Leo, and the character-wealthy, Leo, set up the perfect moral crucible. Ethan's actions demonstrated the emptiness that can accompany unearned riches, while Leo's quiet dignity highlighted the strength forged by genuine struggle and responsibility. The school setting, a place theoretically dedicated to equality of opportunity, became the stage for this uncomfortable societal drama, where the economic divide manifested in a simple, painful transaction over footwear. While the narrative focused heavily on the fallout from Ethan's cruelty, the power of kindness was subtly yet powerfully represented through Leo's unwavering demeanor and the intervention of Mr. Albright. Leo never retaliated, never sunk to Ethan's level of malice. His quiet resilience in the face of public shame was in itself an act of profound self-respect and a subtle form of moral kindness. He refused to engage in the cycle of negativity. He chose dignity over drama. However, the most significant act of kindness was Mr. Albright's intervention. Although his action led to discipline, it was fundamentally an act of moral kindness and justice. He didn't intervene because he knew Leo's secret identity. He intervened because he witnessed a vulnerable person being unjustly humiliated by an arrogant bully. His decision to speak up, to use his considerable influence not for personal gain but to defend the dignity of a student he believed was truly disadvantaged, was a testament to the transformative power of a single decent person refusing to tolerate cruelty. This single act set the entire chain of consequences in motion, proving that sometimes the greatest kindness is not a gentle word, but a firm stand against injustice. This action served as a crucial counterbalance to the mockery, injecting a much-needed element of ethical justice into the toxic school environment, ultimately paving the way for a lesson far greater than mere detention. The confrontation in the principal's office, though private, was destined to become the most compelling piece of viral school drama the Academy had ever experienced. The news of Ethan's public shaming and his father's near-catastrophic business risk, all triggered by mocking a pair of worn shoes, spread like wildfire. It wasn't just the students who were talking. Parents, faculty, and administrators were whispering about the unbelievable financial twist. The story had all the elements of high drama: arrogance, quiet suffering, a dramatic reveal of hidden wealth, and a swift, ironic comeuppance. The tale, circulating through texts and social media snippets, became a morality play, instantly captivating the entire school community. Ethan's humiliation was spectacular because the consequences were so disproportionate to the perceived crime, highlighting the razor-thin line between superficial judgment and profound life lessons. The fact that the poor student was the child of a billion-dollar investor turned the gossip from mere high school drama into a viral legend. This narrative structure is perfectly suited for an inspirational short film. The visual contrast between Ethan's luxury sneakers and Leo's scuffed, yet symbolic, footwear offers potent visual shorthand for their opposing values. The story arc is classically compelling. A protagonist, Leo, facing unjust adversity, a clear antagonist, Ethan, defined by their moral flaw, and a powerful moment of justice delivered by an unexpected source, Leo's father/Mr. Albright. The film would inspire viewers by championing the virtues of humility and dignity over materialism and snobbery. It serves as a powerful reminder that character is the true currency, and that appearances are often profoundly deceptive. The short film's emotional impact would stem from the universal desire to see the arrogant humbled and the deserving validated, turning a simple school incident into a truly uplifting and memorable narrative about the true meaning of success. The public exposure and the subsequent far-reaching consequences of his arrogance triggered a profound and painful student transformation in Ethan. The shift wasn't immediate, nor was it easily accepted. Initially, there was anger at his father for the severity of the punishment, anger at the principal for calling his family, and bitter, simmering anger at Leo for simply existing and being the catalyst for his downfall. This was the defense mechanism of entitlement, shifting blame rather than accepting responsibility. Ethan was used to superficial consequences, a warning, a brief grounding, not a life-altering threat to his family's financial stability, and a forced apprenticeship in humility. The true turning point began when his father enforced the community service requirement. Stripped of his designer clothes, his expensive car, and his easy-access credit, Ethan was thrust into the gritty reality of the Harrison Foundation's donation center. His task was mundane and humbling, sorting through piles of used clothing, especially footwear designated for children whose families genuinely couldn't afford new items. The first few days were agonizing. Ethan worked with a visible sulk, treating the task as beneath him. He found himself surrounded by volunteers, people older than him, people with less wealth than him, who worked with a genuine smile and a sense of purpose that he couldn't comprehend. He hated the dust, the lack of air conditioning, and the smell of mothballs and second-hand fabric. It was the antithesis of the Northwood Academy experience. One afternoon, he was tasked with organizing a box of winter boots. Many were heavily worn, needing minor repairs, but one pair stood out. They were almost identical to Leo's scuffed shoes, the very ones he had mocked. As he held them, he saw the smoothed soles, not as a sign of neglect, but as evidence of countless steps taken, possibly by a child walking miles to school, just like Leo sometimes had to. It wasn't laziness or failure, it was effort and endurance. For the first time, he saw the shoe not as an object of ridicule, but as a silent testament to a difficult life lived with dignity. This moment of clarity broke through his shell of arrogance. He started listening to the conversations of the other volunteers, hearing stories of single parents working 3 jobs, of children who saw a donated coat as the most precious gift. He realized that the contempt he had casually directed at Leo was, in fact, an insult to every person struggling honestly in the world, including, he slowly grasped, his own father, who had started from nothing. The transformation deepened when he finally delivered his mandatory public apology to Leo in the principal's office. He walked in, not with the rehearsed lines his father insisted upon, but with genuine remorse. Looking at Leo, who sat quietly, exhibiting his usual unwavering calm, Ethan didn't just apologize for the words, he apologized for the contempt behind them, for the assumption of superiority, and for the profound lack of respect. It was an apology that acknowledged his moral failing, not just his poor judgment. This moment of authentic contrition was the final step in his internal transformation, marking his transition from an entitled bully to a student beginning to understand empathy and the true value of human worth. He realized that the immense pressure his father was under from Leo's father, Mr. Chen, was a direct, palpable consequence of his own lack of character, and that realization was the most effective teacher of all. His social experiment had failed spectacularly, but the resulting fire had burned away his entitlement, leaving behind the nascent structure of a morally aware individual. The entire elaborate deception orchestrated by Leo's father, Mr. Chen, was built around the principle: don't judge a book by its cover. The core message of the narrative lay in the catastrophic failure of Ethan, and by extension, the shallow society that had raised him to look beyond surface appearances. Ethan saw a scuffed, cheap shoe, and immediately concluded that the wearer was lesser, deserving of mockery, and financially inconsequential. He judged Leo entirely on the cover of his perceived poverty, a cover that Mr. Chen had meticulously crafted for the express purpose of testing his son's character and shielding him from the pitfalls of inherited wealth. The ultimate twist revealed the true cover. The quiet, unassuming demeanor and the worn shoes was merely a decoy. The real content, the book itself, contained an immense ethical fortune and a powerful, deeply principled family. Mr. Chen's wealth was far greater, far more established, and far more strategically managed than Mr. Harrison's more publicly visible, highly leveraged fortune. This key lesson was hammered home not just with an emotional blow, but with a severe financial jolt to Ethan's world. The very moment Ethan judged Leo's shoes, he demonstrated his moral bankruptcy, which ironically threatened his family's actual financial solvency. The mocking proved to Mr. Chen that the culture surrounding the Harrison family, which included Ethan, was shallow and toxic. Mr. Chen, the lead investor in Mr. Harrison's critical Aura project, was judging not the project's financial projections, but the character of the people involved. Ethan's cruelty provided a damning character reference, instantly placing the entire investment and the Harrison family's future in jeopardy. The phrase, "Don't judge a book by its cover," transformed from a tired cliché into a life-altering, multi-million-dollar business principle. It taught Ethan, his father, and the entire school community that humility and integrity are the true signs of enduring wealth, and that visible signs of materialism often hide deeper insecurities or, in this case, profound moral failings. Leo, walking around in his well-worn footwear, was a living testament to the moral and intellectual superiority of choosing substance over pretense. His father had orchestrated the perfect real-world lesson to validate the principle. The seemingly poor student held the most power, and the arrogantly rich student was dependent on the goodwill of the family he had ridiculed. The most valuable lesson learned at Northwood Academy that semester wasn't from any textbook. It was delivered in the principal's office, illustrating the monumental cost of superficial judgment and the true meaning of hidden power and quiet dignity. We saw Ethan learn the hard way that the price tag on your shoes doesn't determine the value of your soul, but the real question is, did the punishment fit the crime? To ensure you never miss a moment of justice, drama, and inspiration, make sure you are subscribed to A1 Storyteller and have that notification bell turned on. We have a powerful new story coming next week that you will not want to miss. Now, I want to hear from you in the comments below. Be honest, do you think Ethan's father went too far by putting his own business at risk to teach his son a lesson? Or was it the perfect parenting move? Let us know your thoughts. We read every single comment. If you enjoyed seeing a bully get a reality check, you're going to love the video on your screen right now. Click here to watch another incredible story of hidden identities and instant karma.